The fierce Chicago blizzard howled outside the O'Hare terminal windows, leaving me shivering in my thin jacket as delays stretched into the night, when a warm coat suddenly draped over my shoulders from the woman sitting beside me. "You look like you're freezing," she said with a soft smile that hit me harder than the wind. Little knowing this stranger named Gabriella would become the center of my unraveling world by morning when I learned she was the exact woman my mother had been pushing as my future fiancée. I pulled the coat tighter around us both, the wool still carrying the faint scent of vanilla and something sharper like rain on pavement, and for the first time in hours the chill in my bones eased. "Thanks," I managed, my voice cracking from the cold and the exhaustion of a cancelled flight to New York. She was beautiful in that effortless way. Long wavy dark hair tucked under a beanie, green eyes that seemed to see straight through the polite mask I wore for the world, and a quiet confidence that made the chaotic terminal feel smaller. "Gabriella," she introduced herself, extending a hand that was surprisingly warm. "Zaylee," I replied, and just like that the night shifted. We talked as the storm battered the glass about nothing and everything. Her job as a graphic designer who hated deadlines, my marketing gig that kept me traveling too much, the way Chicago winters always felt personal. Every laugh she gave loosened something inside me I hadn't realized was knotted so tight. But as the hours dragged and the power flickered, my mind betrayed me with flashes I'd buried for 8 years. Lila's face the day I ended us in that cramped dorm room, her eyes wide with betrayal while I spat the words my parents had drilled into me. "It was just a phase, I can't do this to my family." The guilt still tasted like ash. Gabriella noticed my silence and gently asked if I was okay. I lied and said it was just the storm, but her steady gaze made me wonder if she could feel the weight I carried. By midnight the airport had turned into a makeshift camp, people curled on benches, kids crying, announcements looping uselessly. We ended up sharing a corner near gate C-17. Her coat now a shared blanket. She told me about growing up in a big Italian family that loved loud and hard, and I found myself opening up about my own parents, how my mother's idea of love always came with conditions, how my father's silence had always been louder than any shout. I didn't mention Lila, but the memory pressed against my ribs like a bruise. Gabriella listened without judgment, her shoulder brushing mine every time she shifted, and for those few hours the past felt almost distant. When the lights dimmed again and the wind screamed louder, she pulled the coat higher around us both and whispered, "Sometimes the universe throws you exactly what you need when you least expect it." I didn't know then how cruel that truth would become. Sleep came in fits, her breathing steady beside me, and in the haze I dreamed of Lila's tears mixing with the rain outside. Morning light finally clawed through the windows, weak and gray, and my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Gabriella should be there, tall, dark hair, green eyes. She's the one I told you about. Don't mess this up, Zaylee. She's perfect for you." My stomach dropped. I turned slowly, heart hammering, and met Gabriella's sleepy smile as she stretched under the coat we'd shared all night. "Morning," she said, unaware that everything had just shattered. The stranger who had kept me warm through the storm was the fiancé my mother had chosen for me, and the past I'd run from was about to crash into the present like the blizzard still raging outside. I stared at her, the coat suddenly feeling like chains instead of comfort, while the terminal buzzed back to life around us. Gates reopening, passengers grumbling about missed connections. "You're Gabriella," I repeated stupidly, my mother's text burning in my palm. She laughed lightly, misreading my shock as leftover sleepiness. "Yeah, that's what I said last night. You okay? You look like you saw a ghost." If only she knew how right she was. I forced a smile, stuffing the phone away before she could see the screen, but my mind was already spiraling. Mom had been dropping hints for months, subtle at first, then not so much, about someone special from a good family who understood our situation. I'd brushed it off as her latest attempt to control my life after years of pretending my sexuality was just a rebellious phase she could fix with the right match. And now here was that match, the woman who'd shared her coat and her stories and made me feel seen for the first time in forever, sitting 2 feet away with coffee breath and bedhead that somehow made her even more stunning. We stood, stretching stiff muscles, and Gabriella suggested we grab breakfast at one of the reopened cafes before our rescheduled flights. I followed because saying no felt impossible, my feet moving on autopilot while my brain screamed warnings. Over lukewarm bagels and terrible airport coffee she talked about her own family pressures, how her parents had pushed her into art school when she wanted business, how she'd finally stood up to them last year. Each word twisted the knife deeper because I knew Mom had chosen her precisely because Gabriella came from the kind of stable, accepting circle that could normalize me in their eyes. I kept waiting for the moment she'd reveal she knew who I was, that Mom had already briefed her, but she didn't. Instead, she asked about my plans in New York, genuinely interested. And when our knees brushed under the tiny table, I felt that same spark from the night before ignite again. Guilt slammed into me immediately. How could I feel this when the last woman I'd let in was still paying for my cowardice? The memory hit hard and fast. College graduation weekend, Lila cornering me outside the library after I'd ghosted her for weeks, her voice breaking as she begged me to admit what we had was real. I'd looked her in the eye and said the words that still haunted me. "I'm not like you, Lila. My family would never accept it. We're done." She'd walked away without another word. And I'd spent the next 8 years dating men who never quite fit, all to keep Mom's approval. Gabriella's hand on my arm pulled me back. "Earth to Zaylee. You zoned out again." I apologized, blaming jet lag that didn't exist, and we exchanged numbers before heading to security. She hugged me goodbye, quick, warm, the kind of hug that promised more, and whispered, "Text me when you land. I have a feeling we're not done talking." As I watched her disappear into the crowd, Mom called, "Did you meet her? Isn't she lovely? I knew the storm would give you time to connect naturally." Naturally. The word tasted like poison. I lied through my teeth, said yes, she seemed nice, and hung up before my voice cracked. The flight home was a blur of turbulence and regret. By the time I landed in Seattle, Gabriella had already texted a simple "safe flight" with a snowflake emoji. I stared at it for 20 minutes before replying with a heart I immediately regretted. That night Mom came over unannounced, eyes bright with victory. "Gabriella called me. She said you two hit it off. I'm so proud of you for finally giving this a chance." I wanted to scream that it wasn't a chance, it was a trap wrapped in kindness, but the words died in my throat. Instead I nodded, and when she left I pulled out the old shoebox from under my bed, the one with Lila's letters and the photo of us laughing on the quad. The guilt I thought I'd buried roared back to life, louder than the blizzard. 2 weeks blurred by in a haze of work deadlines and late-night texts with Gabriella that grew longer and more personal each day. She was in Chicago still, wrapping up a project, but we video-called almost every evening, her green eyes lighting up the screen while I pretended the butterflies in my stomach were just nerves. Mom kept texting updates. "Gabriella mentioned she loves Thai food. You should take her when she visits." Turning what should have been organic into a scripted performance, I was terrified to mess up. The flashbacks came harder now, triggered by the smallest things. Gabriella's laugh sounding eerily like Lila's, the way she tilted her head when listening, the gentle way she asked about my childhood without pushing. One night during a call she noticed my distraction and asked straight out, "You seem like you're carrying something heavy. Want to talk about it?" I almost did. The words were there about Lila, about the way I'd shattered someone's heart to protect my own fragile place in my family, but fear clamped down. Instead I changed the subject to her latest design gig, and she let it slide with that patient smile that made me feel both safe and exposed. When Gabriella finally flew out for a long weekend, Mom insisted on hosting a small dinner at her house. I arrived early, stomach in knots, only to find Gabriella already there helping Mom chop vegetables like they were old friends. The sight of them laughing together in the kitchen, the woman I was starting to fall for, and the mother who had once threatened to disown me, felt like a cruel joke. Dinner was polite torture. Mom steering every conversation toward how perfect we looked together. Dad nodding silently in approval for once. Gabriella squeezed my hand under the table once. A secret reassurance that sent warmth racing up my arm. But all I could think about was how I'd done this before and destroyed everything. Later, when Mom went to bed, Gabriella and I sat on the back porch under string lights, the Seattle rain soft against the roof. She turned to me, serious now. "Your mom told me a little about your past, how you struggled with who you are. I just want you to know I'm here without any pressure." My blood ran cold. Mom had told her. Not everything, but enough. I pulled away, the old shame flooding back. "You don't know the half of it," I whispered. And before I could stop myself, the first real crack appeared. I told her about college, about loving someone so fiercely it scared me, about choosing family approval over that love. I left out Lila's name, but Gabriella's face changed, Something flickered behind her eyes, recognition maybe, but she only pulled me into a hug and said, "Whoever she was lucky to have you even for a little while. And I'm lucky to be here now." We kissed then, soft and tentative under the rain. The kind of kiss that promised healing. But as her lips met mine, I tasted the lie I was building, and the guilt from 8 years ago whispered that I didn't deserve this second chance. The kiss should have been the beginning, but it cracked the dam instead. Gabriella stayed the weekend and we spent every moment together. Walks along the waterfront, late movies, quiet mornings where she made coffee exactly how I liked it. Each touch, each shared glance felt stolen, because the secret was growing teeth. On Sunday night she left for the airport, promising to come back soon, and I drove home replaying her words. "I feel like I've known you forever." The next morning a message from an unknown number popped up. "Zaylee? It's Lila. Gabriella told me she met someone special. We need to talk." My phone slipped from my hand. Lila. The name I'd avoided for years. Gabriella had mentioned me to her, because they were close friends, the kind who shared everything. The past I'd tried to outrun had just walked back in wearing my new relationship's clothes. I didn't reply at first, but Lila kept texting, each one sharper than the last. Reminders of the night I'd ended us, screenshots of old messages where I'd promised forever then vanished. The guilt I'd carried quietly exploded into panic. When Gabriella called that evening, her voice was warm as always, but I heard the careful edge. Lila reached out to me after I told her about us. "She's hurt. She says you never really explained why you left." I froze. The confrontation I dreaded was here, layered through the woman I was falling for. I tried to explain, words tumbling out about parental threats, fear of being cut off, the way love had felt like a luxury I couldn't afford at 20. Gabriella listened, but when I finished she was quiet for a long beat. "She was my best friend through all of that, Zaylee. I watched her fall apart because of you. I didn't know it was you until she sent me the old photos yesterday." The floor dropped out. She'd known the whole time after that first weekend. Known and still chosen to stay. Anger, shame, and desperate hope collided inside me. We argued for the first time, her voice steady while mine cracked, until she finally said, "I need time. I care about you, but I can't ignore what you did to someone I love." The call ended and I sat in the dark replaying every moment since the airport, realizing the coat she'd shared wasn't just warmth. It had been the beginning of a reckoning I'd spent 8 years avoiding. Mom called next, sensing something wrong, and when I told her the bare minimum she sighed like I was a child again. "You always make things harder than they need to be. Gabriella is good for you. Don't ruin this too." The judgment in her tone mirrored the one I knew was coming from the wider circle friends who'd known Lila. The small LGBTQ community in our city that didn't forget heartbreaks. By morning my inbox was filling with messages from mutual acquaintances. Whispers spreading like the blizzard that had started everything. The storm wasn't over. It had just moved inside me. The confrontations came in waves, each one stripping away another layer of the armor I'd built. Lila flew in unannounced 3 days later, meeting me at a coffee shop downtown where the rain matched my mood. She looked older, stronger, the girl I'd broken now carrying herself with quiet power that made my chest ache. "You never even apologized," she said without preamble, sliding an old letter across the table, the one I'd written the day after I ended us, full of half-truths about needing space. I read it again through fresh tears and finally said the words 8 years too late. I was terrified. My parents threatened everything, college money, the house, their love. I chose fear over you, and I've regretted it every single day. She didn't forgive me, not yet, but she listened while I laid bare the nights I'd cried alone, the fake relationships, the way I'd convinced myself I didn't deserve happiness. When she left she hugged me briefly and whispered, "Gabriella deserves the truth from you, not the version you think she wants." That night I drove to Gabriella's hotel. She'd come back to Seattle after all, unable to stay away, and found her waiting in the lobby, eyes red-rimmed. The argument that followed was raw and ugly. She accused me of using her as redemption bait. I accused her of hiding what she knew from the start. Voices rose, tears fell, and in the middle of it Mom showed up because I'd stupidly called her earlier in panic. Seeing the three of us, my past, my present, and the mother who'd engineered the pressure, felt like the universe forcing a final accounting. Mom tried to smooth it over with her usual, "Everyone just needs to calm down." But Gabriella turned on her with a quiet fury I hadn't seen before. You pushed her into this without knowing the damage you caused years ago. Love isn't something you arrange like a business deal. Mom's face crumpled, and for the first time I saw the fear behind her control. The terror of losing me to a world she didn't understand. Community judgment poured in next. Posts on local LGBTQ forums, old friends texting Lila's side, even a former coworker who'd heard the story and called me the heartbreaker who still hasn't grown up. Each message carved deeper into the guilt until I couldn't breathe. Gabriella left that night without promising anything, and I sat alone in my apartment surrounded by the evidence of my cowardice. Old photos, unsent apology letters, the coat she'd given me at the airport that I'd never returned. The moral war inside me raged. Did one act of cruelty 8 years ago disqualify me from ever loving again? Was my mother's well-meaning pressure worse than my silence? The questions followed me into sleepless nights until the only answer left was the terrifying one. I had to choose truth, no matter the cost. Redemption didn't arrive in a single dramatic moment. It came in small, painful steps that felt like walking through broken glass. I started with Lila, showing up at her hotel with the shoebox of memories and every unsent letter I'd written over the years. She read them silently while I waited, then finally said, "I needed to hear this then, but hearing it now still matters." We didn't become friends, not yet, but the door cracked open, and the weight on my chest lightened by a fraction. Next was Mom. I met her at the same porch where Gabriella and I had shared our first kiss and laid out every year of fear. Every time her disapproval had made me shrink. She cried, real tears, not the performative ones I'd seen before, and admitted for the first time that her arrangements came from terror of watching me struggle alone. "I thought if I found someone good enough, you wouldn't have to fight so hard," she whispered. It wasn't full forgiveness, but it was understanding, and that was enough to start rebuilding. Gabriella was the hardest. I flew to Chicago unannounced, the same coat she'd given me folded in my carry-on like a white flag. She opened her apartment door looking exhausted and guarded, but she let me in. I told her everything again, not the polished version, but the ugly truth of how I'd almost walked away from her too, because the guilt felt safer than hope. Then I handed her the coat and said the words that had been burning in me since the blizzard. "You gave me warmth when I was freezing, and I want to spend every day trying to be worthy of that kindness. No more hiding, no more denial." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled me into the same hug from the airport, and when she kissed me this time it tasted like forgiveness and new beginnings. The community backlash didn't vanish overnight. Some friends stayed distant, whispers continued, but slowly, as Lila posted about her own healing and I started showing up authentically, the judgment softened into cautious acceptance. Gabriella and I took it slow, rebuilding on honesty instead of secrets, and for the first time the future felt like something I could walk toward without looking over my shoulder. The storm that started everything had passed, leaving clearer skies and the kind of love that survives exposure. But standing here now, watching Gabriella laugh at something on her phone while the Seattle rain taps gently against the window, I can't help wondering, can a single act of courage truly erase years of denial? Or does the past always leave its mark on the people brave enough to choose love anyway? Was I right to finally stop running? Or did the pain I caused mean I never deserved this second chance at all?